Welcome back to Life Without Secrets. We are all about the secrets, the struggles, and the strategies. And today we're going to be talking about growth, the power of organic reach, and why you should be telling your own story. Our incredible guest, Jordan Mendoza, founder and CEO of Blaze Your Own Trail Consulting, will share practical strategies to help you organize your reach, build a stronger personal brand online, and achieve consistent growth. Jordan's journey of resilience and transformation from overcoming personal adversities to becoming a trailblazer in strategic marketing and personal branding is sure to inspire and empower you on your own journey. So let's dive in. Jordan, welcome to Life Without Secrets.
Well, I lost you there. Sorry.
We're back with the internet. Welcome to the show, Jordan. I'm so glad to have you here.
I am excited, Jillian. I know we finally got to meet in person in Dallas like a few months back, so that was awesome. And now getting the opportunity to hopefully add some value to your audience today and hang for a little bit. It's kind of like round two.
Yeah.
So
I know. Yeah, like Jordan and I met through Amberley Lago's mastermind, and you came and spoke to us. And then we finally got to meet in person. And when we met in person, I got to hear a lot about your story. And I was even more intrigued about like who you are, what you do, what you're about. Because you show up really authentically. But you also have this really cool brand and presence. And so I think like just to start, I think I want people to get to know you because I feel like I knew what you did, but once I knew more about you, like it was just like this connection piece that obviously we're gonna like pull that all together in the episode. But like tell us about like how you got started in what you do. What has your journey been like thus far, and why did it lead you to what you do?
okay, I think what I think you said was how did I get into what I do today, or where the
Yeah, like
journey
what
start?
has your journey been like and how did it
Yeah.
lead you there?
Yeah, so my brand today, of course, if you kind of fast forward to now, is all about blazing trails. Blaze Your Own Trail Consulting. I have a newsletter called Trailblazing Tips. The podcast is Blaze Your Own Trail. And when I think, about my journey, and I think about how far I've come, I have blazed a ton of different trails, and I've taken the road less traveled. The kind of unorthodox way of doing things, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. I'm definitely a disruptor, so to speak, when it comes to am I going to follow the rules, or am I going to stretch them, or am I going to break them? It's like I definitely always have leaned towards more of being a risk taker, and that's something that's kind of started in my childhood. And growing up, definitely some humble beginnings. Grew up very poor in the Pacific Northwest, in Portland, Oregon, and grew up with a mom that had one lung, and so she suffered a lot. Just kind of seeing the way that she kept her attitude positively, even though she had a lot of adversity that she faced, and
Mhm.
really growing the thing called empathy and learning about compassion at an early age. Definitely I grew up quick, but I learned a lot about people, and my mom was somebody that, again, didn't make excuses for her circumstances. She was always positive. She always believed in me and told me that I could really do whatever I set my mind to. And so having positive people in your influence, even though your environment may not be something that a lot of people would enjoy being in, but just having somebody that loves you, that's there, that believes in you, that was definitely foundational for me. And so my mom was definitely the biggest inspiration in my life. And losing her young, she passed away unfortunately at just 54 years old, but she did
Mm.
do pretty well with the hand that she was dealt. The doctor said she wouldn't live past 18. She lived to 54.
Mm.
They told her she
Wow.
wouldn't have any kids. She had 5 boys.
Oh,
Our
wow.
last brother at 40 years old. I mean, so she definitely went above and beyond what the on paper expectation was. And so she was a fighter, and a lot of that really was instilled in me. Like, hey, don't give up. You got to keep going. You got to push. And so when she passed away, it was one of those things where, in one sense, the fire was put out. But after I started really sharing her story and journey with other people, a different fire was ignited, and it gave me the
Mm.
courage to not only realize that there was that I had my own story and that I had been through things, because just seeing her and knowing what she went through was like, man, how do I even look at anything I went through as being adversity? I did not have I had two lungs my whole life. Like, there was just a lot of that, and I had an alcoholic stepdad that was abusive, and so she had to deal with that
Mm.
type of things, and then dealing with divorce and dealing with moving 14 times before birth and 14. So again, I didn't early on identify that anything that I went through even had relevance until I started to share her story. And so, I definitely want to share with your audience some of those early experiences, some pivotal moments that have really helped shape who I am, because I think
Mhm.
there's some lessons in there that might be able to help them deal with any type of adversity that they may face.
Yeah, we would love to hear them because I do think like, you know, I think what we go through is not to compare, but it's to share with those right people that are going to be listening and that they're going to be able to find hope and grow from it in themselves because the truth is we really are never alone in what we're going through.
100%. Yeah, and so one of the stories I'd like to share, happened when I was in elementary school. I was in fourth grade. I don't know why in the state of Oregon we did a picnic when fourth grade was over. Usually you do that like when you go to middle school, but we had a picnic anyways, and it was at a park, and as you can imagine, any elementary school park games were happening. So baseball, you had tetherball back when it was legal. I don't think it's legal anymore, but there was
It's
kickball, there
not.
was
I
frisbees
loved
being thrown around, and it
tetherball.
was just this big fun day at the park. And I decided I was going to play baseball, because I did play baseball from elementary until I was in eighth grade, and so I was up to bat, and I grabbed the bat, I swung it, and I like spun around in a circle, and the bat flew under a big Douglas fir tree, and I went over to get the bat, and when I stood up, a literal beehive, was on top of my head, and I was being stung. I was running. Bees were
Oh.
chasing me. Students were running away. Teachers were running away, and eventually, some teachers grabbed these big coolers, dumped them on top of me, and started picking the bees off. And I got stung 53 times that day. And,
Oh my
luckily I
goodness.
wasn't allergic to bees, or else, we would not be on this podcast interview having this conversation.
Yeah, and probably not. Yeah.
It's funny because afterwards I thought I was immune to bees. I would just go and pick up bees and let them walk around in my hands. And then a few weeks later, I got stung in the eye by a yellow jacket, and that was the end of my immunity. But definitely,
Oh, wow.
pain, right? It was like definitely some pain. Definitely, I got to see how people react in crazy circumstances, and seeing some people fight or flight, right? And which is most people are kind of running away. But I got to kind of learn that, hey, even adults like can get scared, right? And they can not know what to do in situations. And then I also learned that I had a pretty high tolerance for pain, because it after
Mm.
seeing probably 20, it's you start to get a little numb to it, I feel like.
Mhm. Yeah. I That is insane. That's a lot of bee stings, and,
Yeah.
I hope that never happens to anybody else because that sounds
Yes.
terrible.
Yeah, definitely was not very fun. So story 2 came when I was 12 years old, and I mentioned earlier we moved 14
Mm,
times from birth to 14. So one of
mm,
these moves, we actually moved a couple towns away, and so that required me to take public transportation from the apartments that we were in to a 7-Eleven convenience store, which is a stop, and then from there I would catch the next bus over to my middle school. And so my mom learned the route with me during the summer. And so by the time school was ready in the fall, I would be ready, and I could take this route, and I could get to school and come back home from school. And so every time I would stop at 7-Eleven, which was like I had a half hour before the next bus, I would play Mortal Kombat 2. That was my video game of choice. There were a couple other games, Pinball Machine and something else there, but that was my game of choice. And so one day I was just sitting there playing Mortal Kombat 2, and the bells chimed like someone entered the 7-Eleven. And I heard a man's voice yell, "Hey, Daniel!" And I am Jordan, so I just kept playing the game, and within about a minute, my body was lifted in the air. I was thrown into the Terminator 2 pinball machine, where the gun was the trigger, punched in my ribs, thrown on the ground, and handcuffed and put in a cop car. And
Oh my goodness.
Of course, I was crying. Didn't really understand what was happening. The lady at the store was trying to tell the cops who I was, and they yelled at her and told her they were going to arrest her. And my saving grace was that when I was in the back of the cop car, I remembered I did my homework the night before because I didn't do it very often. So I knew like this was done. And I said to the officer, I said, "Hey, please, like, look in my jacket pocket. You'll see my name is Jordan Mendoza." And I mean, I was banging on the window trying to get his attention. And he finally listens. He opens the door. He reaches his hand inside my jacket and he pulls out the crumpled piece of homework that said Jordan Mendoza. And at that time, he looked like he saw a ghost because A, he knew he had the wrong guy. B,
Mm,
he knew he screwed up, right? I mean, you don't punch anybody, let alone a 12-year-old kid.
yeah.
And they profiled me. They racially profiled me. They thought I was a Hispanic runaway, and my dad's from the Philippines, so I'm not even Hispanic. So I mean, there's just a lot of things that they did not get right, and
It's
at the
terrible.
end of the day, they ended up losing their jobs, and I moved on. And of course, my mom really wanted to take him to court, really wanted to win. There's a lot of money potentially, but just seeing her go through things that she did, and my great grandmother got sick, so I saw her deal with cancer and dementia. And so, in addition to empathy, I grew something called compassion. And so for me, it was like,
Hmm.
hey, I knew they did something wrong, but I just want to move on, and they definitely don't need to have their jobs, but I'm not going to try to escalate this and take this and draw this thing out. And so that's what ended up happening. They did lose their jobs, and I kind of moved on with some lessons and a story to tell, and the hopes that people can think, right? I think sometimes it boils
Hmm.
down to being able
Hmm.
to think, maybe ask some questions, because I think
Yeah.
the situation could have been handled a little bit differently.
I bet you never forgot to write your name on your paper for school either.
Right? Yes. Always have your name. Yeah, for sure.
That's terrible. My goodness. Well, tell us about the next story because I
Yeah.
I want to like cuz these are such significant stories in your life and I love that you like know these with so much detail. Like you can tell that you have spent time, going back on your life and really, being still on that moment in your life and kind of dissecting it from a point of not like I'm a victim, but like these are the things that I've been through that I overcame and what were the lessons in those situations. So, first of all, I just want to say like kudos to you because I think like we all should be doing this in our life, right? Like pause, take a break and think about those things that have happened to you and what can you extract out of that as a lesson instead of letting it hold you back, right? So, I love where we're going with this and I want to hear more and then I want to know like how did these stories then um create you or help you blaze your own trail?
Yeah, and so I think you really hit it on the head as far as these situations that happen right to us. Some may say, but really it's for us. And if we can extract the
Mhm.
lessons, if we can really dive into it, it really enables us to see through a different lens. And
Mhm.
sometimes that shift in perspective can be the big unlock, right, in our world. And it
Huge.
usually
Yeah.
enables us to help other people along our journey. So, like my stories, love to share them with clients because I wanted to see, hey, listen, like you,
Mhm.
no matter what's happened to you, right? It's possible
Yeah.
to turn it around, and for me, a lot of that comes back to my faith, and my
Mhm.
Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and because
Yep.
everything that I've gone through, all of the pain, all of the adversity, all of the lessons, like there's no way I could have made it through without having a firm foundation to stand on, and
Yeah.
even when the foundation wasn't firm, always having access and availability to something that's greater than me, and uh, the situations for me, they just show me that I'm not done yet. They show me that it
Mm.
wasn't my time, that I've got purpose, that I have a mission, right? That I need
Yeah.
to share these things with so many people, as many as I can. And it's also the reason why for the last month and a half I've been writing my first solo book, which is going to come out this fall, which is going to be
Oh
titled
my
"How to
gosh.
Blaze Your Own Trail Despite Your Circumstances."
Yes.
And so we can walk through these stories and lessons, and there's plenty more in the book that haven't even scratched the surface yet. And again, it's all about, okay, what can we learn? What are we going to do about it? Okay, and then how do we keep going, right? Despite
Yeah.
our circumstances, despite what happens, because the one guarantee I'll give anyone that listens to this or watches this is you are going to face adversity. That's a guarantee
Mhm.
I'll give
Yep.
everybody.
Yep.
We don't know when it's going to happen, but it's bound to happen, and it's all about
Yep.
how do we react and how do we respond, and how can we keep moving. And so this next story isn't for the faint of heart, because it was supposed to be a very exciting trip where we were opening an office from California to New Jersey, and it ended up turning to really our worst nightmares. And this happened in April of 2000, so 24 years ago. It's just crazy to say. I was 19 years old, and we were driving across country. We're going to open an office in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and there was multiple cars, big caravan full of us, and we traveled and did the most unorthodox route that any 18 to 23-year-olds would do, which is why go straight over across the country when we can go down to Phoenix and go to Vegas and Salt Lake City.
Right.
And so we kind of did the scenic route, and eventually we made it into Wyoming. And for anyone that's ever been to Wyoming, you know that there's not a lot to look at there. And so as we were on this drive, I was in the back of a Chevy King cab pickup truck, and I was actually seated not forward but sideways because there were boxes around and uh, things kind of all packed in the truck, as you do when you're moving across country. And my
Mhm.
buddy Jeremy was driving. As two other passengers, Freddie and Kara, in the front cab. And about 4 in the morning, my buddy Jeremy, I was sleeping. He falls asleep at the wheel. And when
Oh
he
no.
wakes up, instead of hitting the gas or the brake, he actually hit the gas and he overcorrected on the wheel. So just kind of two negatives. We slid. I woke up while the truck started to slide at north of 70 miles an hour, and I was able to yell, "Holy crap," 3 times, and then the truck lands, like hits the ground. And of course, it's dust everywhere, just like you kind of see in the movies, right? Dust all over the place, smoke. And I get out. Freddie and Kara get out, and there's a big hole in the windshield where Jeremy was supposed to be, and he got
Uh,
ejected, 25 yards from where the truck actually landed. And so our whole party, we're just walking around, we're searching for him. We eventually find him, and he stood up like a zombie, and then he just fell back down on the ground, and we were just like, this is not good. And so our saving grace was there were some off-duty EMTs that just happened to be coming from a conference in Colorado that just pulled up as
mhm.
the dust was starting to settle. And so they were able to get a helicopter there to life flight our buddy to Casper, Wyoming. While all this kind of commotion was happening, I start to smell this like irony smell, and I reached down my right leg, and my hand went in about a fist deep, and I had a 8 inch or 12-inch cut on my right leg that went from the side of my leg all the way down to the bottom underneath, and I had an 8-inch cut on my left leg, and I had to be rushed to Rawlins, Wyoming for emergency surgery, and they at one point thought I might lose my right leg, and definitely said that it would be hard to be able to walk again. And so that was tough. I mean, I remember actually yelling at the ambulance driver because he was going like 95, and I was like, I almost just died in a truck, but I feel like I'm
Yeah.
gonna die again.
Mhm.
Like getting to the
Right.
hospital, I was like, slow down. But I
Yeah.
understand when you lose multiple pints of blood and are freezing cold in April in Wyoming, they had a reason. And so when I woke up in that hospital bed, all doped up on morphine that next morning, I look over to the left of me, and it was my buddy Branderis. And the reason why I bring that up is what I didn't tell you about the story is that in Utah, maybe 7 or 8 hours before the accident, we were in a Walmart parking lot, and we were just kind of taking a break, hanging out, refilling up on the beef jerky, as you do. And me and Branderis, we were arguing and literally almost got into a fist fight about who was going to sit in the cool truck. And so when I
Oh my
woke up
gosh.
that next morning after surgery, and I saw his face, I looked him in the eyes and I said, "I'm glad it was me." Because I just thought,
Oh,
what if he would have been in that spot? What if
wow.
he would have had his seatbelt on? I didn't, and my body was able to shift and rearrange because I didn't have my seatbelt on. And where I landed, if you would look at the truck afterwards, that whole other area was just smashed in like a can. And so that's why I said to him, I'm glad it was me, because I just thought, man, I could have lost my
Wow.
friend, but I knew that
Oh
if
my
I had
gosh.
survived that, I it was because I could handle it. And that was a hard road
Mhm.
to recovery. I was mentioned I played baseball, I played soccer, I was a break dancer, and so it was very hard. Like I was going into the rehab thing, like, hey, there's no way I'm not going to be able to walk again. Like I'm done all
Yeah.
these things, and so I was rehabbing like
We
crazy
also
with
saw
the
your
walker, with
mom
the
do so many things.
wheelchair.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw my mom
Mm,
fight. I
mhm.
was not going to give
Mhm.
up, and
Yeah.
by the grace of God, made a 6 month recovery. And at 43 years old, I'm still breakdancing. I'm teaching breakdancing. I've got no ailments
I
from the
love that.
injuries. But I've got
That's so cool.
a story to hopefully inspire people, right? That things can happen to you and they can look really, really bad. But in the end, they could turn into a really important part of your story.
Okay, there it froze a little bit.
No
Yeah,
worries.
so tell yeah, so take us to the point where, like, because I think that you were in, like, kind of like a corporate situation, right? Before you did your own consulting company. So take us to that point where you began Blaze Your Own Trail Consulting.
Yeah, of course. So, just to give some deep context, so I've been in sales now for around 30 years. I started
Mhm.
um, door-to-door sales when I was 14, and then in high school I did everything from telemarketing to coupon books, alarm systems, you name it. And so I've always loved communication. I've always loved face-to-face, communication, learning about people, and finding ways to solve people's problems. I've always kind of had that ability. And so was when we just were about to have our first child, my wife Natalie we were in New Orleans at the time, and she had to go back for her last trimester, and I was working in New Orleans doing sales. And once our son was born, we were basically living with her grandmother in like a double wide trailer in South Georgia, and I was like this can't be like what our life's going to be, right? Like I
Wow.
didn't have this
Yeah.
sales job anymore because I had to get back to my wife and my son, and I just looked around like I've got to do something here. And so before the corporate job, I made a hard decision to call my dad, who lived in Maryland, and at that point he had had a landscaping company for about 15 to 18 years already, and I just needed work. And so I called him and I said, "Hey dad, like is there any way that we can come like live with you? Can I come work for your company? Like we have our new child, like we need to start like getting on track with our life here." you know
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he agreed, and he said, "Hey, yeah, you guys can come move in with us for a month." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, thanks." But he's like, "I'll give you a job, and this is what you're going to make. You're going to be working basically 7 to 7 12-hour days doing landscaping." And so I had done that in summers as a kid, so I already knew the job. I knew what to do. I knew it sucked, and I was in. I was like, "Hey, like
Yeah.
this will get us more money." So we moved up to DC, and I started working for him. And this was spring of 2005. So we're looking like March of 2005. And so um, I'm doing this and through the summer, and then in the fall, after all the leaves have fallen, something called snow hits DC every year. And
Oh,
so
no. Yeah.
by the time the winter hit, I was again out of a job because you can't like rake snow.
Mm.
It's just not
Yeah.
something people are going to pay you for. And so I got a job selling windows, and uh, wasn't really good at it because I'm not like, I think my wife originally thought she married like a handyman. That's not me. I'm not your guy to like build stuff or fix anything. I'm like, call a contractor or you do it,
Right.
So
Yep.
um so I start selling windows, and I realized that I suck at measuring tape. And so like I have to measure people's windows, and I was like, this job is not for me. And thankfully, while I was getting a package in the leasing office of the building we lived in, somebody at the office said, "Hey, We always see you. You're smiling. You're positive. You always talk to us. Like, you've ever thought about doing leasing?" And I was like, "What's that?" And they explained that I would be the guy that takes somebody on a tour and shows them the place and signs the lease agreement, and I would
Mhm.
make
Mhm.
hourly plus commission. And my only question,
Mhm.
Jillian, was this: do you offer benefits? Because I didn't get him with my dad. Yeah, we have this, son
Mm.
who's now almost
Yeah.
a year old now, and I was like, "Do you offer benefits?" And they said, "Yes, we do." And so I applied, and that started a 15-year career in property management. So I went in
Oh,
for the
wow.
benefits, and I came out on the other side with a 15-year career. And so I accelerated really quickly because of my background in sales. They promoted me from leasing to assistant manager within 6 months, and then from assistant manager to property manager 9 months later. So from day one to 16 months in, I went from not knowing anything about the industry to managing multi-million dollar buildings. And it was just
Oh
like
my goodness.
crazy. I kind of took the fast track. They hadn't seen anybody like grow that quick. And after 5 years on site and getting cussed at, yelled at by people because it's everything's your fault when you're the manager, I decided to apply for a learning and development role. And I spent 8 years really honing my craft as a facilitator, as a coach, as a trainer, learning systems and processes and video editing and how to do shows and Zoom before Zoom was really popular. And all of those skill sets. Um, and as I started putting myself out there on social media, I started to grow an organic audience on LinkedIn, where I went from 7,000 followers in April of 19 to 20,000 by the end of that year. And that really encouraged me to start a podcast and talk to successful people and find out how they've blazed their trails. And now you fast forward four and a
Mm.
half years later. I've also started my business in 2021, Blaze Your Own Trail Consulting. And, now I help people blaze their own trail online, by showing up, optimizing, sharing their stories, and leveraging it to help people, leveraging it to show everybody that it doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter where you come from, what your education background is. None of that matters. What matters is,
Yeah.
uh, can you turn what you've been through and your story and all your strengths into something positive that can serve and help people? And I think that's what a lot of us are searching for. It's like, hey, what's my purpose on this planet? Like, what am I here to do? And I really feel like for
Mhm.
me, it's to show people that, yes, you're going to go through hardships. Yes, life isn't going to be easy, but you have a choice of what you're going to do with your experiences. Are you going to let them hold you back,
Yeah.
or are you going to let them push you and fuel you to move forward?
Yeah. I also think it's important to note too that like it doesn't really matter how old you are, like, or whether you have already been in a career for 15 years, right? Like
Yep.
you made the choice to blaze your own trail and leave something that was comfortable and secure, right? Like you talked about how much like the benefits meant and like you were going to have to then figure it out from there. And, when we
Yep.
hear about people's stories like yours, it's like we learn that there's hope and that it's possible if you're not happy and or if you're not fulfilled or if you're not really living your purpose or if you're feel like you're stuck in that job, like that there's a hope and you can blaze your own trail and find another path. I want to dissect really because I really want to
Sure.
give people some strategy on social media. Like, how did social media play a role? And we can be more specific and talk LinkedIn or
Yeah.
you tell me which one has been good for your business, like from a business standpoint, like for people that are, like, yeah, you know what? I do want to blaze my own trail. I do want to go down this other route. How can social media help me? And what does that look like? How did it work for you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And what a great question. And I think the first thing that I'll say is there are some really great tools out there that can help you learn about you, And so when we talk about professional development or like getting deep context into who we are as humans, I'd love to share a few resources that could help your audience.
Yeah,
And,
I would love
if you
that.
want to put them in the show
Yeah.
notes, and again, no like affiliate links, like this is just like tools that I've used, tools that I've taught that I know can help people be able to dive into who they are. Would that be helpful?
That'd be so great. Yeah.
Okay. So the first tool I would take a look at is called Strengths Finder, or they call it, I believe the new version is Clifton Strengths. And this is an assessment that you
Mm.
take, and it'll actually populate what your top 5 strengths are. And so one thing that I know about myself is I'm an activator. And so before social media was social media, I was building audiences on platforms like MySpace and platforms like Foursquare and Facebook in the early days. And so
Right.
I like to give that context because a lot of people don't know that. And when you're figuring out any platform, you're learning, right? And then if you can show other people how to use those platforms, in Japan, they say teaching is learning twice. So every time one teaches to learn, right? The teacher and the student. And so I've
Mm.
always been a
Mhm.
guy that activates myself and figures these things out. And so that's kind of a tip I would give you is become an activator, get curious, and if you don't know it, like go and test it, go and try it out. And that's the biggest way you're going to learn is through actually doing. Okay. And so again, I mentioned strength finders because I wouldn't know that about myself if I haven't invested in a resource that can give me that context. And so because I know what my top 5 are, I'm using those strengths early and often. I'm an activator. Communication is a strength. And so again, once you know your strengths, then you can actually invest more time and energy and effort into building them versus focusing on your weaknesses. Again, we have to manage our weaknesses, but we should really be investing in what our strengths are because that's where we're going to get to optimal growth. And so that would be the first assessment I would tell you to leverage as a resource to really help take a dive
Mhm.
into who you are. Okay. The second resource I'd give you, and I am MBTI certified practitioner, it's the Myers-Briggs type indicator, okay, MBTI.
Mhm.
And understanding how you're wired from a personality perspective, that really helps take an introspective look at yourself. And once you know how you're wired, it really helps you be able to identify it in other people and helps you gain common ground with other people as well. And so that's another assessment. Of course, there are ones that where you don't have to pay. You can just Google free MBTI, and those are great resources as well. They just don't hang on the same amount of data that maybe Myers Briggs would because it's the second or third most widely used. But again, all of them, again, for any budget, you can really get context on who you are. And then the third one would be Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a book, and in the back of the book, there's an assessment, and that's going to tell you, what your EQ scores are. And EQ is one of those things that can actually you can grow those muscles over time if you're investing in the 4 buckets. And so those are definitely resources that I would say to people to invest in yourself, invest in resources, because once you have this new information, it's going to enable you to look through a lens that you have not seen through before because you didn't have the context.
Yeah.
Okay.
So going back to, sorry, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, and I was going
It
to say,
paused there
and
for a
again,
second.
the reason why I share those with you is those are great so that you have this new arsenal of information, right? With that newfound data, now you're going to know, okay, this is how I'm wired. This is where my EQ is. These are some growth points. These are my strengths. So now I know, okay, I've got strengths here. So when I show up online, if I'm putting out content, these are areas that I know are going to be easy. These are areas maybe I might need some help in. Does that make sense? And so getting that
Mm.
context
Yeah.
is going to help you on your journey. And so, but what I'd love to give is really the 6 steps that anybody should take if they want to build their own personal brand online. Would that be helpful? Yeah, stop there. Would that be helpful, Jillian?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do
Okay.
it.
All right, perfect. So this is the point of the show where if you don't have a notepad, I would suggest grabbing a notepad, grab a sheet of paper, and jot this stuff down because this will actually, you'll be able to insert this strategy to any platform. I don't care if it's LinkedIn or Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, any of them. This will work as long as you follow this structure. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is you want to optimize. Okay, you want to optimize your profile. Again, doesn't matter which platform, but you have to make sure your profile is optimized. And so what do I mean by that? Well,
Yeah.
when I'm working with any clients, whether it's group coaching, it's one-on-one clients, I give everybody the same advice, and it is that uh, on your profile, you first want to have your service statement. Okay, so this
Mm.
is, I help X do Y by Z. So for me, I help entrepreneurs and companies leverage digital marketing and social media to win business. That would be your
Mm.
service statement. Okay, so
Okay.
that should be the text that people see when they show up on your different profiles. So you could have that on Instagram. You could have that on the beginning of your LinkedIn headline text. You could have that on Facebook. You could have that on TikTok. Okay. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that every platform has a different character limit. So you may have to tweak and adjust or shorten depending on the platform. So don't come yelling at me if you're
Mm.
like, hey, it didn't fit, Jordan. Okay. Well, now you know it may not fit. The same thing may not fit on each platform. But that's the first thing that you want to do is optimize, and it should start with a service statement. Okay. Now, again, keeping in mind that real estate's different on every platform, you want to think about this. All right, what's my call to action? So what do I want people to do as a result of finding me? So maybe on IG, your call to action is you want someone to book a call with you to see if they want to hire you. Then you can have that text there. Okay. And
Mm.
I would, we're in 2024, emojis are hot right now. So maybe a finger pointing down or an arrow. Does that make sense? That's
Yeah,
to the
totally.
place that you want to send them. And so
Okay.
I've noticed a lot lately with clients, and then just with me just auditing people's profiles at random. But a lot of people in 2024 are confusing people. Okay,
Mm.
and lack of clarity leads to confusion, guys. So
Mm.
here's what I want you to think about. If I'm telling people to click somewhere, is it getting them to the exact place I want them to go the fastest?
Mm.
Okay, let me
Mhm.
say that
Yeah.
again. If I'm sending people somewhere, is it getting them to the exact place I want them to go the fastest? Okay, there's something
Hmm.
called, the least amount of friction wins. And if we want to create the least amount of friction, we've got to, if we're pointing someone somewhere, it should go exactly there. So what I mean by that is, if you're a serial link tree linker, and you've got a link
Yeah.
tree and you got 1,000 links, that's not going to work. Okay. Because
Mm.
guess what I'm doing? I'm like, which link? It's like, oh, you got this link, you got this. And I'm like being sent all over the place like it's a wild goose chase. Okay. So we don't want to confuse people. So if I were to say, book a call with me below, that better be my Calendly link. And
Mm. Mhm.
they better be able to click that, pick a date and time, answer my questions, and get to me. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? And so for some of you, that is a message you needed to hear. And for others, you might be doing just great in this department. I'm not sure which one you are, but hopefully that's
I
helpful. Okay.
already need to hear it.
Okay. So again, who are you, right? Your service statement. What's your call to action? If the real estate on the platform allows, then you can add in some additional keywords. If you're a podcast host, if you're an author, if you're a speaker, you can add those other things in. Again, if you've got the real estate, it just depends on your platform. All right. But that's
Mm.
phase one of building a personal brand on any platform, is you have to make sure your profile's optimized, because it's like, do you want to move into a house that doesn't have firm foundations? It's like,
No.
no, right? You don't want to do that, because guess what happens? The walls start to come down eventually. So we want to start
Mm.
with an optimized profile no matter where you are. All right. You ready for number
Okay.
two?
I am so
Okay.
ready. This is
Once
great.
you're optimized, now you got to have a content strategy.
Mm.
Okay. We don't want
Yeah.
to do what's called pray and spray. Okay.
Oh
This is
boy.
where you
Yeah.
just are
I do a
tossing
lot of
stuff
that.
out, and you're just praying someone's going to watch it, someone's going to hear it, someone's going to hire you, right? And we don't want to do that. So having an actual strategy, and I call it a Monday through Friday strategy. My clients always look like they want to kill me, but this is what you need to do. You need to have a Monday through Friday strategy of how you're going to show up. Contextual is the key word, to that platform. Because here's another thing I see a lot. Everyone will take the same copy, the same
Mm.
hashtags, the same video, pump it out on every platform and think that that's just going to be like the magic genie in a bottle. But I hate to be the bearer of bad news, guys. Every platform is different. And so if
Yeah.
you're just copy pasting and spraying, that is the spray and pray method. And we don't want to do that.
Mm.
And so you need to get clear on your strategy. You need to get clear on what your goal is for each piece of content. What do you want people to do as a result of consuming it? And if you have never thought that way, reach out. I'd love to help strategize with you and resource you and point you at least in the right directions. Even if you're not a good fit to work with me, I at least give you some free info and a game plan that you can go and implement in your
Yeah.
business. Because again, if you don't have a strategy, eventually you don't have a business. I mean, it's just the bottom
Mhm.
line. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's the second thing, is have a strategy, knowing the platform contextually of how you're going to show up. Now, I'll give you guys a pro tip. Vertical video is how you should be showing up the most, because that's going to
Okay.
get you in front of the most eyeballs possible. And we're at a day and age of attention is the name of the game. So the more visibility you have, the more opportunity you have, the more opportunity you have, the more chance for building relationships, nurturing those relationships, and eventually getting them converted into clients, if that makes sense.
Is vertical video good for LinkedIn as well, or is that different?
Absolutely, absolutely. And they're beta
Okay.
testing a video only feed right now. So it's the best time to actually start pumping out
Oh,
more of your
okay.
podcast clips and things like that on
Didn't
LinkedIn.
even
Yep.
know that.
Now you know. Now you know, right? So
Right?
again, the first thing is, guys, optimize. The second thing is you got to have a content strategy, and your strategy should be Monday through Friday at minimum. I always tell my clients weekends are a bonus. If you post something on Saturday with a family, something like that, that's great. It's just more exposure. Who doesn't want more exposure? Raise your hand. Nobody raised their hand except me, right? And I didn't
I'm
mean to
like,
raise it like I
"Oh,
don't
we."
want more exposure. I
Right.
just raised it just for the video's sake. But so hopefully that's helpful so far. Eyes, have your content strategy. The third thing, okay, it is an engagement strategy. And this is a
Mm.
missing link for most people, meaning they will schedule a bunch of content, they post and they ghost and they don't show back up. And when they do, people are mad that it took them so long to reply back to them. And
Mm.
so budgeting time for engagement is the missing link for most content creators. And you wonder why no one's watching. It's because, well, hey, when they did watch and they did say something, you weren't there for them. And it's just like,
Mm.
just imagine you're walking down the street. Like I walked past you, Jillian, and I like am waving at you, and you just kept walking by and you didn't even react. Like that would be
Mhm.
pretty rude.
Yeah.
That would not make me feel very good, right? And it's the same thing that people feel when we don't actually engage back with them. Okay.
Mm.
And so it's like, how do you create more engagement? Well, engagement sparks engagement. And so that's what I would focus on, and don't just focus on like what's in it for you. Actually engage with other people. And I even would say, before you post what you're going to post, find people that you'd like to potentially maybe come to your stuff and actually comment contextually on their content. Why? Because most people believe in the law of reciprocity, right? If hey, they
Mm.
commented, I'm going to go comment back. So you're priming your audience for what's to come. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Okay. And so that's the third thing. You have to have an engagement strategy. The fourth thing is a growth strategy. And this is, a lot of people kind of like give me a weird look when I say this, because they're like, you have to have a strategy of how you're growing. And I'm like, well, how else are you going to grow? You just think like the numbers are just going to keep moving up, right? So you have to be intentional about what that growth strategy is. And so that could look like, hey, I want to connect with X amount of new people on this platform every single day. I want to be intentional about that. I want to make sure that I'm communicating with new people that come into my audience every single day, right? That's how you grow. That you have to it's content and platforms, it's a two-way street, right? You have to take the online offline and have conversations in the DMs and build and nurture those relationships, or else it's like, why would you just collect connections and followers or friends? It's like, it's pointless, right? You
Mm.
have to
Mhm.
actually engage in community. And so that's the next piece of it. Okay, so we've talked about optimizing, right? Having that content strategy, having a strategy to engage, but also being intentional about growing, right? Having a growth
Mhm.
strategy. Okay. And once you've kind of figured out the growth strategy, Now it's like, how do I take the online offline? So how do I get these new fans, new followers, new connections into my ecosystem, which could be a book call, which could be to a free resource, to your podcast, to your book, whatever that is. And so what's your strategy on getting people there next? And what's that point of connectivity for you? And are you putting in the work to make sure that that is a consistent output, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, finally, it's you've got to obviously close the deal, right? So you got to have the skill sets to be able to have the conversations that turn into whatever that opportunity is for you. And again, it could be a new listener, a new fan, a new follower, a new reader of your book, a new customer. I'm not sure because for everybody on social media, we all have different goals and different reasons and purposes for why we're there. But hopefully that 6-step framework is helpful for people where they can say, okay, now that I have this new information, I can look and see what I've been doing and see if it matches up, see if it's actually in alignment. And if it isn't, and you need help actually installing that in your business, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. I love helping people all over the world, figuring this stuff out. And I had to figure it out the hard way. I didn't have a coach, and so a lot of the things that you're going to learn came from learning what not to do first, and then learning the right way to do it. And so it's been a fun journey so far, and I love helping trailblazers like you, Jillian. You're definitely a trailblazer, and I definitely we got to get you on my show as well to share your trailblazing story here in the future.
Yeah, it'd be so fun. Well, I want to talk a little bit on because I think this is a common problem, and so I want to bring it up, right? Because we want to talk about the struggles and the secrets we deal with, like, off of the screen too. And so I think a lot of people like, it's like we start off good, right? We're like, okay, I have this strategy and this is what I'm going to do. And then it almost feels like an energy vampire that's like kind of sucking us dry and we get really overwhelmed with it. And then what do? We just like avoid it altogether. So, like, do you
100%.
have any strategy that, like, if we're feeling overwhelmed or like we don't really want to show up, and get on that vertical video, right? Like that actually takes sometimes some courage, sometimes getting out of our own head. What do you have anything that you suggest for overwhelm or like feeling like you're afraid to show
Yes.
up or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I've been there. Me too, right? If you've dealt with that, me too. I've dealt with the days where I didn't want to show up, I didn't want to post, I didn't want to do the thing, right? It's just like I just don't want to adult today. I just don't want to do it. I
Right.
think we all can get there. And what are your circumstances? Well, I can tell you this. I've got 5 kids and one on the way, folks. So
Right.
if because you're too busy, like that excuse can just go out the window because I would just say that's cute, So don't let that be an excuse. But here's the thing: like if you're having, you got to set up some systems and processes. That's really what it boils down to. And so for if you are at a point in your business where you don't really have a budget to hire people, right? Because a lot of people that are starting out, if it's the side hustle that's going to be the main hustle, a lot of times you are at a limited budget capacity. And so what I would say to you is figure out some things to save you time. So one of those things could be to batch your content. So what that would look like
Hmm.
is you get a platform like Riverside or Zoom or Google Meets, and you sit there for an hour and you record yourself putting out content, and then you take that and you chop that up into micro pieces that now you have content for a couple weeks, right? So that's
Mm.
one thing you can do to maximize your time. Okay. Now, if you want to double dip on that fact that you just maximize that time, now you can leverage internal tools on the platforms to schedule your content so that you don't have to be there. Does that make sense?
Mm.
And you can still have the content go out, but again, you have to keep in mind when it's going out because you have to engage. So don't forget about that piece because we talked about that earlier. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So those are
Yeah.
kind of some budget friendly ways where it is going to cost, but it's time versus money in the sense that as long as you have the bandwidth and you've budgeted that time that you can do it, even if it has to be 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. or 3 a.m., right? Whatever works for
Yeah.
you, just make sure that if you're going to commit that you do get it done. Now, As you do that, and as that starts to grow the revenue in your business because you've put in those reps and hard work, now as you have a little bit of budget set aside, it might be time to invest, right? So that could be investing in a coach, right? Somebody that can help get you from A to B and be the bridge that you have to have that gap filled with. Okay,
Mhm.
maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a program, maybe it's a course, right? So I don't know where you are on your journey, but I do know that all of those are great investments. The biggest investments I've ever made have been back into my business or into myself, and hiring people that are smarter than me that have been there and done it.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, there's been a lot of people, Jillian, that have invested in me even when I didn't believe in myself.
Mm.
And man, that has been so helpful. And so I feel it's almost a disservice when I don't say, hey, listen, like, I know I can help you, let's figure out how we can work together. And so I find myself saying that to so many people, because it's like I literally see the A to Z, and you're sitting here on C, like, how do I get to D, and so when you can have someone like that in your corner, it's very powerful, and it can really help collapse your timeline. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, my goal is always just to be a resource. I hope that today I was at least able to give value, to your audience, whether that's through a story or through a lesson, or even just through some advice on what they can do next for their business.
Yeah, that's huge. And I also like that you pointed that out, because I think there is a fear, at least for me anyway, of like, I love connecting with people and just like connecting with their heart and just like, and so I never, or I think I have a fear that like if I'm bringing my business into it, I don't want it to be like transactional, right? I don't want them to think that like I'm connecting with them for a transactional purpose. Or does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And actually, I was at an event that I think Ken Joslin. He
Uh-huh.
throws an event called the Create Conference, and
Yeah.
I went to the year that John Maxwell was the first speaker, and he said, when you're working with clients, you don't want to be transactional, you want to be transformational, and
Yeah.
that's very true, right? You want to be able to see somebody come out different on the other side. So that could be their
Mhm.
confidence is raised, their awareness is raised, their education level is raised, but they should not look the same on the other side of you working with them. And that's what real transformation is. And so, yeah, for me, like, I don't want to just work with somebody for a month. Like, I want to invest in them, and I want to make sure that I can help them no matter what part of the journey that they're on. If they're just starting, or if they're just trying to get to a point where they want to scale and really hit like really shatter through the ceiling that they put a
Mhm.
limit on for themselves. Because unfortunately, sometimes we're not playing big enough, and it takes
Yeah.
somebody else to tell us and see the value
Yeah.
that we have and say, hey, like, why are you charging so little? Like, let's raise the prices. It's time. You have the knowledge,
Mhm.
you have the value, and we need to level up here. And when you
Yeah.
can get people in your corner that are thinking like that, it really helps shift your perspective to see what's possible. And so that's what I
Mm.
love to do when I'm, working with people. And that's why I've
So
done
good.
my show for the last 4.5 years. It really is to show people, like, hey, look at this person's journey. Here's where it started. Here's where they ended up. And why can't that be you?
Mm. Yeah, it's such a good point. Well, how can people connect with you from here? Because I feel like we could do like a whole nother hour already.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, first of all, Jillian, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. It's definitely an honor to be able to speak to your audience. And anyone that hears this, if you got value out of it, really, you can reach me on any platform. Instagram is at the real Jordan J Mendoza. And if you're serious and you're ready, that you're on the trail right now, but you're trying to figure out how to blaze it, you're like, how do I
Mhm.
set that initial spark? Or maybe the spark's already lit, and you're like, I really want an inferno here. I want something to be caught on fire that's very hard to put out. Like, reach out to me. And in fact, if you are thinking about, a social strategy, and you want help, like, getting your social media game changed to where you're no longer doing the pray and spray, but now you've actually have
Yeah.
strategies that are actually moving the needle in your business. If you
Mhm.
DM me on Instagram, okay, the word blaze, um, and I will do this for anyone in your audience, Jillian. Just
Oh,
DM me the word
awesome.
blaze. I'll set up a call with you, and if you decide you want to invest in any of my programs, I'll give you $500 off just because you're a listener of Life Without Secrets. Okay, so
Aw,
I'd love to do that
very
for your
cool.
audience. And again, I appreciate your time for having me on. It was just so fun to be able to come and speak to you, and I cannot wait to hear feedback once this airs. I hope that your audience gets value.
Yeah, I'm so excited to share this episode and also like just keep connecting and I feel like I learn so much from you every time we talk. So, thank you for sharing so much today and like I said, like we could just keep going. So, I just appreciate you being here. I love hearing about your remarkable journey and you being willing to share a lot of your insights today too.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And
Yeah.
once my book comes out, I'm going to be sending you a signed copy,
Oh
Jillian.
my
So
goodness.
yeah, of
Yes,
course.
please. I cannot wait
Yeah.
for that. That is so exciting. Well, to our listeners, we hope you found this episode as encouraging and motivating as we did. Be sure to connect with Jordan online and check out Blaze Your Own Trail Consulting for more transformative strategies. Until next time, remember to stay true to yourself and keep embracing the journey of growth and connection. Hey there, it's Jillian from Life Without Secrets. Ever feel like you and your partner aren't quite on the same page? Well, you're not alone, and that's exactly why I created our latest issue of Truthful magazine. It's packed with insights and stories about bridging that gap and finding a deeper connection. We're diving into real conversations about needs, feelings, and how honest dialogue can rekindle that closeness that you've been missing. Why not explore this together? Go grab your free copy right now at lifewithoutsecrets.com and turn those pages into shared moments. Can't wait for you to dive in and share your thoughts with me.